What's up, everybody? So today we're back in the garage and we're finally working on the Civic once again. I actually had a company reach out to me and they want me to test out some coilovers. So that's what we're gonna do today in this video. So let's go ahead and show you guys what we got. So as you guys can see here, we got a full set of coilovers from Maxpeedingrods. I've got the two fronts and the two rears. And if you guys may have noticed here, the box has a little bit of oil on it. So when I first got this box, it had a little bit of damage to it, and the two rear coilovers, so that was this one and this one, both the shock bodies had a little damage to them and they had leaked oil. And thankfully enough, their customer service department and their parts department, all that stuff, sent me a new replacement shock bodies. So we got all that replaced and good to go. So far working with them has been pretty easy, pretty simple, and they've been awesome to replace and fix any of the damages. So with that being said, these are the coilovers for the front. The spring rate here is an 8K, and then the spring rate on the rears is a 5K, and then they are 24-way adjustable, so they have these little knobs here on top. You can turn it all the way to the right to tighten it up and all the way to the left to make it for a softer ride. Also includes these little spanner wrenches and whatnot. Overall, this shouldn't be too bad to install on the car. Everything is pretty basic. Civics are fairly easy to work on. I'll be curious to see exactly how long it takes us to do this whole swap of the coilovers, because if you guys didn't know, my Civic currently has function and form coilovers on it. It's got the Type 2 or Type 1 coilovers. They were on there from the previous owner. They're a little old. I don't know how many miles are on them, but they are looking a little crusty, so this should be a nice little cleanup. These are relatively cheaper coilover as far as price goes. So we'll see how these handle and perform compared to the function and forms, test them out. And before we go any further, this is the shock body that was previously on the car. So you can see here it's completely collapsed, and I can pull it out by hand and it stays out. So you don't want that. Make sure you test your shocks and your coilovers before you actually install it in the car and make sure there's no damage or leaks. And like I said, working with the company so far, they're awesome to work with. Sent me a replacement right away and got it taken care of. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get it all installed in the car. So starting with the front here, you guys can see this is the shock assembly, or the coilover in my case. So we're gonna go ahead, in order to remove this, there is a 17mm bolt down here that connects to the lower control arm. We'll go and pop that out, so that'll make it so this whole assembly will be loose and wiggle. And then we have this 14mm here that clamps onto the coilover. Once that's out, that should separate from here to here, so that should drop down and be out of the way. And that's all that's left to do. Is there's two 17mm nuts up in the engine bay attached to the strut tower to take the whole assembly out. So once those two nuts are out of the way, we can drop the coilover out and slide it out. So let's go ahead and see how well this works. So there you guys have it. First coilover is out. You can see exactly the two bolts up there in the strut tower. On the fork here, how that clamps down onto the strut assembly. And then of course, down here in the lower control arm, where that one long 17mm bolt goes through the lower control arm and clamps all it on. So pretty simple. We'll bring the Maxpeedingrod coilover over here and kind of compare the two just to see the differences. So here's the two coilovers beside each other. We got the Maxpeedingrods and the Type 1 function and forms. So just looking at these already, the one thing I did notice is these Maxpeedingrods have the dampening abilities. Like I said, they're 20-way valve adjustable. My function and forms that I had on the car have no dampening adjustability, so these will be a nice little upgrade from that. Spring rates might be a little bit different. You guys can see here the difference in the two springs. Like I said, the fronts were 8K, the rears were 5K. I'm not entirely sure what the function and forms are. Overall, I think this should be a little bit better feeling of a shock because you're able to adjust the dampening on it. It's got that little valve on top. So you go all the way to the right, it'll make for a stiff ride, all the way to the left for a soft ride, and go somewhere in between to make it a nice level one. The only other thing is, I think I'm gonna pop this bracket off, because if you guys can see here on the lower control arm, it's got the bracket that holds the brake line on it. So we'll pop this bracket off. We'll go ahead, make sure our preload is set. The preload on the spring should be 180mm. So we'll measure the spring from here to here. That should be 180. Tighten this collar down, and then that should be set for a 0 preload on this. And then we'll go ahead and adjust our height, figure out what exact height we want, match it up to all the other coilovers, so we'll be good to go. But overall, should be a pretty basic, easy install. We'll just do the same process as, or reverse order of removing to install it. So you guys just saw, we went ahead and measured the preload. We got it from the top of the spring to the bottom of the spring is 180 millimeters. We got the locking collar tightened down here, so it shouldn't move. All it's have to do, go ahead and install this on the car, and then we'll go ahead and adjust right height while it's on the car. Shouldn't be too bad of a job to do. We'll have to make sure that all 4 corners are exactly the same. So we'll get this front one installed, move on to the passenger side, and we'll go to the rears. Okay, so you guys can see here, the lower fork here that goes on the shock body. Slides over it pretty loosely, and if I tighten it down, it's still too loose. So the one thing that the kit does include with the Maxpeedingrods is it comes with this little spacer. So you guys can see here, it's got a little lip on here. So this lip will go up on here just to make it a little bit bigger, because I'm assuming that these shocks or this coilover assembly probably works on multiple Hondas, Acuras and whatnot. So they're probably designed for differences. But we'll go ahead, slide this on here. Like that. So you guys can see here, we end up getting the coilover all installed. Took me a little bit longer than what I wanted it to, just because this piece here at the very bottom, I'm assuming that they're kind of like a universal coilover, so they're designed for different kinds of Acuras, Hondas, whatever, but they all use this fork style design, and the one that is currently on this car needed that spacer, that little adapter to, or I guess you want to call it a sleeve, to slide in there to take up some of the extra space. So once we got that on, we were able to slide the fork assembly there on, and that was a little bit of a tight squeeze, so it took a little bit of time to get that to line up, but now that's on, it got tightened down and is all set up to where we want it to be. I got about that many threads sticking up here, and I want to say there's maybe 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 inch more adjustability before we actually bottom out. So I've got these, I want to say almost maxed out, but not quite. From the axle to the fender line here is about 13 3/4 of an inch. My old setup was 13 1/2 inches, and I'm going to go just a little bit higher just because I'm still rubbing on the fender liner here. I don't really want to take it out, but if we have to, we'll take it out. We'll see how it sets once we get it back on the ground. But now we got this side down, we'll go ahead and jump on the other side. I'll knock that one off camera, and then we'll go ahead and jump on the rear. Okay, so now jumping onto the rear, you guys can see here, there's just the one bolt down here. It's 14 millimeter. We'll pop that out, and then there should just be 2 bolts up inside top of the strut tower. Get those out, and then this should pop out. That shouldn't be too difficult. We may have to push down on this assembly here just to get it out of the way. I'm hoping that the back should be easier than the front. So let's go and get that out, and then move on to the interior. Okay, so going into the hatch here, we gotta get the privacy cover out of the way. So we'll go and pop that off. We'll just set that off to the side here. And then as far as this goes, there's just a couple screws here. I don't think there's any, oh yeah, there's one on this back side, so I'll have to drop the seat down to get to that. But once those 3 are out, this plastic cover will come off. There might be a speaker assembly here, or we might be able to get around it, but there'll just be like those 2 nuts on top of the strut tower. So once those are out, the coilover should come out. So there you guys can see, hopefully, there's those 2 nuts that we need to get to. So we'll go ahead and grab our extension and a socket. We'll pop those out. And just like that, this coilover is out. Okay, so when I got my preload set on this, we'll go ahead and slide it up through those 2 strut holes there, and then we can get the base connected on, and it should be good. So you guys can see there, we got the coilover end on the rear, got the 2 strut tower bolts put in. We got this lower bolt put in as well to the lower control arm. The only thing I did notice is on this bolt here, if you guys look over here, I had to utilize a different nut because on the coilover or the function and form one, it has a threaded nut attached to it, it's welded to it. So I don't know if that's the same way on all factory struts as well, or if it's just like this with the function and form one or not, but the kit on the Maxpeedingrod includes a couple washers, so there's like 4 in total, and then it includes all new strut tower bolts. So we're able to utilize these strut tower bolts that were attached to the function and form coilovers, and it's the same thread pitch as this lower control arm bolt. So if you guys can see, we go underneath here, you can see there we got the factory nut, a little washer that goes through to another nut, and then the bolt there. So now we'll go and tighten this down, and we'll move on to the other side. Okay, so we got all the coilovers on now, fronts, rears. Dampening is set. I have it all set down to middle, so it's all 12. and now wheels and tires are back on. So let's go ahead and get this thing back on the ground, see how low it sets. Like I said, the front end is almost max. I want to say I maybe have like a 1/4 of an inch to go if I want to go lower. The back, same way. Everything should be level, basically to when I had it all set up before with these function and form coilovers. So we'll go ahead, get this on the ground, see how low it sets, make sure the ride height's all good. So yeah, let's drop this thing down. So, as you guys just saw, we got the Civic back on the ground. It's looking really good. I think the ride height might just be a little bit lower than what it was before, so we may have to raise up at least the front. So we might have to raise up the front just maybe another 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 an inch. I do have enough clearance there, but the only thing is, like I said, that fender liner does hit. So either that or take the fender liner out just because it's gonna hit on the tire and make some noise. Overall, fitment, not bad. And in the rear, same thing. I can get my hands through there, no issues, so we shouldn't have any rubbing in the rear. And like I said, with this whole kit, these coilovers, I haven't got them maxed out as low as they can go. So if you want to go lower, I probably have another 1/2 inch all the way around. I could go lower. If that's what you're looking for, is to go lower, there is a little bit more room to go lower. Overall, as far as installation goes with the kit, or with the coilovers you guys saw, we did have to add a few little pieces, which they do include. They included the spacers for the rear, the little fork section that goes over the top of the lower control arm. You have the 2 washers, and then you just reutilize one of the nuts from the strut tower, and it's the same bolt pattern. So you just thread it on, and that holds it in. And then for the front, they include that little sleeve that goes over the fork section for the base of the coilover, and it grips it. So overall, not too bad. Just had a little bit of struggle getting the front one on, but once we got that on, it was just pretty much smooth sailing. Took a little bit longer than I wanted to, but overall, not too bad. One nice thing is, compared to these function and form coilovers, was these ones do have 24-way dampening adjustment, so that is a nice little touch. I will like to test it out. So here we're gonna go ahead and take the car out, go for a little spin, test them out, see how they feel. I've currently got them set up to a 12 on the notches, I guess. So it's in between the rougher ride or the softer ride. So we'll test that from there. If I need to go stiffer, I'll just turn it to the right. If I want to go softer, I'll just turn it to the left. So let's go and take this thing out, see how it handles, and test out these coilovers. Maybe we won't go on a little test drive. I didn't realize it was snowing. So, a couple days later, quit snowing now. Roads seem to be pretty clear. We don't have any salt or nothing on it, so we can take the Civic out for a drive and test out these coilovers. As you guys just saw, that did not go as planned. We didn't get very far at all, just kind of going down the road there, and the car was hitting some of those like snow drifts and stuff. I thought the roads were cleaner than what they were. Hitting any of those little snow patches, the car would just kind of want to shift around. These tires on it are just shot, they're bald. So I can't really give you guys a full review or a true test of these. We'll have to wait until the springtime or summer, and I'm not gonna put new tires on these wheels because we will be going 5-lug and we will be getting new wheels and tires for it. We'll be also running new disc brakes in the rear, so stay tuned for that. But overall, my first impressions of these coilovers, they are fairly simple to install. As you guys saw, the feeling of them so far just going down the road there, it was a nice comfortable ride compared to the function and forms. We do have dampening adjustability, and I do have it set right in the middle between stiff and soft. Just feeling it so far, it wasn't like super bouncy or anything. It was a rather comfortable ride, and surprisingly, I didn't like have any rubbing, which I thought I would, because with the old function and form setup at this height, we would rub a little bit, whereas now, I think I maybe rubbed just a little bit on the fender well, but not nearly as much as it did with the function and forms. I think it might just because it's not nearly as bouncy of a ride so far. But yeah, like I said, we'll go ahead and give it a true test, hopefully this spring or this summer once we get everything swapped over. For now, if you guys are interested in these coilovers, I'll be sure to link them down in the description below. I believe they're giving me a little bit of a discount code to share with you guys, so if you guys would like to save a little bit of money, make sure to check them out and pick yourself up a pair. We'll go ahead and end this here, so if you guys like this video, make sure to big thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. Like I said, we got a bunch more stuff coming for the Civic, and I've been picking up some goodies for the Subaru, so stay tuned for that, and I'll see you guys in the next one.